Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to let you in on a bunch of tips and productivity hacks that I use when using ProtoPie. So sometimes you've got an instance of a component in your scene and you're tapping around and you're kind of confused why you can't edit certain values, and then the penny drops, you realize that you're actually in the instance and not in the component. So changing the background of your component is a great way to orientate yourself. So if you know the background of your component is, say, blue, for example, then you're going to know that you're inside of the component. And the great thing about backgrounds in components is that if we come back to the scene, we can see that the background doesn't get translated into the instance. It's completely invisible when you're looking at it in the instance mode. Another great hack using background color is to organize my components. Typically, I'll use one color for my primary components and another color for nested components. Now when I view my component thumbnails, I can tell the difference between my primary components and my nested components. Init is short for initiation and is taken from the world of coding. Put anything you want to run when the scene loads in the init trigger. To create one, just add a start trigger at the top of the interaction stack and rename it to init. Then all you need to do is add any responses that you're using for any initial setup into the init trigger. When building prototypes, it won't be long before you have a huge list of triggers and responses. Once that happens, finding things can be a real pain, especially as ProtoPie doesn't have a search feature in the interaction panel at the moment. One of the things I do to help me easily find things is to use the group feature to group the same triggers together. I'll group my taps, detects, and receives together because I find that when I'm debugging an issue, I normally know which trigger type I need to look at. Up to now, we've been using the reset response to set an object back to its initial state. If I want to just reset a single property, I can use initial. Here, my rectangle is moving and rotating. I just want to reset the rectangle's position, so I'm using initial to target just its X property. Now when I tap, only the position is reset. Hey, if you enjoyed the video so far, it might be a good time to subscribe to the channel. I've got some cool new videos coming your way that you're not going to want to miss. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get back to the tips. Okay, so this is another hack I use when writing formulas. How many times have you written a formula and then just added a number on the end like this? Of course, it makes total sense when you write it, but come back to it later and you're like, what's that number for? Instead of just adding a number, save it in a variable. And then you can use that variable instead. That way, you can give the variable a useful name like padding, for example, and now your formula will make a little bit more sense. I know, who wants to name their layers, right? I mean, it's such a drag. But it's so important in ProtoPie as we use layer names a lot when choosing targets for responses and writing formulas. And it's in formulas where camel case is particularly useful because they are so much easier to read when in a formula. Also, you want those layer names to be as teeny tiny as possible because let's face it, the formula window, I mean, it's tiny. Using camel case will make your layer name shorter, your formulas shorter, and there'll be a lot less scrolling. Once you've written a formula, it can be tricky to change sometimes. So I just wanted to show you how to select things correctly. So if I go into my formula window and I want to change the layer here to this rectangle too. So what you need to do is you need to just make sure you select the whole object until it turns blue. As soon as it's turned blue, you can hit your backticks key on your keyboard and that's going to open up the layer window, and I can now choose rectangle 2 and you can see that successfully replaced it. You can do the same for properties in a slightly different way. So Again, if I select the X and the forward point until it turns blue, now this time I'm going to type a dot. That's going to bring up my properties drop down, and I can choose, say, rectangle.y, for example, and then click OK. So unlike other parts of ProtoPie, if you reference a layer name inside of a formula, and then you wanted to go back and change that layer name, your formula is not going to get updated. It's going to break and it's going to turn orange. So let's see an example of this. So I'm inside of this slider component, and I'm going to change the name. So I might want to organize my components into subgroups. So I'm going to put this into a group called components. So to do that, I'm just going to add the word components and a /. That's now going to put my component in a subgroup. But you can see over here that I've got some orange. I've got this formula which is now broken because the formula is expecting a layer called slider big, but the layer is now called components / slider big. Now, as you can imagine, every time I update a component name, I would have to manually update the references in every single formula. So we've got a hack to get around this, and the hack we're going to use is a function called layer. And layer allows me to dynamically give a formula a layer name. We're going to use the layer function together with this variable I've got down here. So I've got a variable already set up called component name. Just going to drag that to the top. And you can see here it's already got the name of my layer, components slider big. So you just need to make sure that you put your layer name inside of your variable. I'm then going to come over to my formula. I'm going to come into the formula window and I'm going to remove the layer name, and instead I'm going to put in the layer function. So I'm going to choose layer, and inside the parentheses here I have to give it the variable name. So to do that I'm going to give the variable name component name. So I'm just going to type that, start typing that, and then I'm going to choose component name from the list, and then I'm going to click OK. Okay, so now my formula is happy. It's got a reference to this variable. Now, if I wanted to come back and change this name, say I take the whole components thing out, I just want to go back to slider B again. Now, you're not going to get an error because it's still looking at this variable name, and all it cares about is what the variable name is called. But what you can do now is I can copy my new name, my new layer name. I can come over to my variable and I can just paste that in here. And now my formula is going to work okay. Now, obviously in this situation, I've only got one reference, but if I had like 10 or 15 references to that layer name, I would have to manually change those every single time. Whereas in this way, I only have to change the name inside of the variable. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this tips and tricks video. I hope you learned something new and useful today. If you had a favorite tip, let me know down in the comments. If you liked the video, then please give it a like. And if you want to see more of my videos as and when they come out, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. Okay, so that's about all we've got time for today. I'll see you here next time here on ProtoPilot.